going on, everybody? It's JR Album Reviews, and today we're going to be reviewing none other than Lil Uzi Vert's Pink Tape. This is the Philadelphia rapper's 7th full-length album, his first in 3 years as a follow-up to Baby X Baby Pluto. And because Uzi kept us waiting longer and longer for this album to finally drop with a heap of anticipation, my expectations were through the roof for this one, to say the least. So yeah, guys, without further ado, let's get into it with track number 1. This track starts off with a kind of dark pad and Uzi vocalizing at the beginning, kind of, bringing some texture to it. Then as Uzi starts rapping, the opening lines don't bring that much to the table. Corny sex bars, Uzi's normal shit that he talks about, yada yada. But outside of that, we get a touch of reverb added to Uzi's vocals, which adds to the atmospheric vibe of the track overall with, the pad that I had mentioned earlier. Uzi also hits us with a great flow switch about a minute 45 into this track list, keeping my interest at least. But my one complaint about this song is Uzi's stagnant subject matter. He's talking about his girls, his cars, his jewelry, yada yada yada, and it just kind of feels one-dimensional at that point. So while this track wasn't my favorite lyrically, the super spacey beat was definitely a highlight, along with Uzi's flow, which really kept my interest throughout this track. So with all this being said, the negatives and the positives that I have about this track, I will say that this is a valid track in the track list. A really high energy opener, so I'm going to give this one for 1. Let's move on to track number 2. Track number 2, Suicide Doors, starts off with some guy and his hatred for Uzi's painted nails and how he wears dresses and his feminine demeanor. The build up to the bass drop on this track was really nice, and off the rip I just got a whole lot of Red vibes, and we see Uzi trying to impersonate Playboi Carti in a sense, because the influence is definitely there. And the same can be said for the production on this track as well, with the hard guitars over the trap drums. And this is a style and direction I just didn't see Uzi going, just completely out of left field, and I must say he did not do that great of a job at it. Shortly into this track, we're met with Uzi doing this snarling shit, which just does not sound great at all. And again, like I mentioned in the last track, Uzi's stagnant lyricism continues to be a factor in this track as well, with even cornier bars on this track and a worse flow than the previous song. Now, I do get influence. I get being influenced by other artists and being persuaded to try their style of whatever they're doing, and Uzi just, like I said, he did not pull this one off at all. And yeah, I really don't have much else to say about this track other than it kind of fell flat a minute and 30 into it, and I just completely lost my interest. Yeah, Suicide Doors was definitely a miss on this album, in my opinion, of course, and that is going to bring us down to 50%, which is 1 for 2. Let's move on to track number 3, A with Travis Scott. With this track, we're met with a super simple string trap beat, which is nice. The Travis Scott feature on this one definitely caught my eye, so that was something to look forward to. And in my opinion, this track kind of has like a slow build up to it and doesn't really start picking up until around the 45-second mark. I also would have preferred the tempo of this track to be a bit faster as well, because it does feel a little bit slow throughout. Uzi again comes in with little to no substance lyrically, and honestly his verse kind of just sounds half-ass. And unfortunately that description is nothing short of Travis Scott's feature on this track as well. First off, his feature's way too short, being only about 20 seconds in length, and Travis Scott is also known for using a lot of auto-tune for his voice, and on this track it just sounds completely drowned out in the auto-tune and was complete overkill. Not to mention the hook on this track is super lackluster and uninteresting and substanceless, while the beat is really the only thing I could take away from this track, which still isn't that great. Yeah, for me to look forward to a track this much, especially with one of my favorite artists as the feature, it was a letdown to say the least. With all that being said, we are 1 for 3 so far on the pink tape. Let's get on to track number 4. Track number 4, Crush 'Em, is started off with this super simple but sweet string pattern in the background along with a distorted piano. I feel like the momentum kind of picks up as Uzi sounds super sharp lyrically. This is definitely the best track lyrically so far, in my opinion. Uzi's lyricism along with the super high energy beat and the catchy hook just makes for all around a banger and a great track. This was another very valid song, so we're gonna go 2 for 4, back up to 50%. Let's move on to track number 5. Track number 5, Amped, is another metal influenced track. We're back to this Whole Lotta Red, Playboy Cardi type style. The beat on this track being significantly better than Suicide Doors, with hard hitting 808s and an electric guitar and some nice trap drums as well. But again, even with a beat this well, Uzi's god-awful Cardi impersonation along with this snarling bullshit that's going on, like, I just feel like it's totally unnecessary. The second half of this song, though, it felt like it was gonna pick up somewhere, but then it just kind of didn't. It fell flat. Uzi went back to his awful Cardi impersonation, and it just wasn't great. So yeah, the best part about this song was the beat for sure, and for this beat to go this hard and Uzi put on such a shitty performance was quite a letdown, to say the least. So with another miss, that brings us to 2 for 5. Let's move on to track number 6. Track number 6, X2, starts off with this very fun, energetic, and bouncy trap beat, which really gave me a lot of Ken Carson vibes off the jump, only to later find out that he was the one that actually produced the song. This is definitely a step up from the last 5 songs in my opinion, as I kind of got some 2016 Uzi vibes from this one. And for a beat like this that you usually wouldn't hear Uzi on, he actually did exceptionally well in my opinion. Uzi on this track sounds super sharp lyrically and vocally, with a super fun and catchy chorus as well. And this was also the best beat so far in my opinion in terms of breaks, transitions, and just overall sound selection as a whole. X2, super fun track overall. Definitely would suggest listening to this one. I'm definitely going to return to this one. And with that, we are 3 for 6. Let's move on to track 7. Track 7, Died and Came Back. We hear Uzi flaunting his luxurious lifestyle, and he also talks about how he still fights demons even though he's living this luxurious lifestyle. The track starts off with a super atmospheric beat with these bells as the counter melody and also a nice brass section as well. Some more great flow from Uzi on this track. Again, this one kind of reminds me of 2016 Uzi. And while the subject matter is still scarce, like I feel like he's rapping about, the same shit, the vibe of the track overall kind of makes up for it, as the beat is super simple but engaging, kept my attention, and I feel like this track overall was just great. Nothing else really to say about it. So with track 7 out of the way, we are 4 for 7 so far. Let's move on to track 8. Track 8, Spin Again, we're immediately met with some more of the snarling stuff that Uzi's doing. Like, I don't know why he's doing it. Like, does he think it sounds good? Because it really doesn't at all. The beat too sounds all out of whack, with the snare having kind of like a drill pattern more than a trap pattern, and it just doesn't correspond with Uzi's flow well at all, and just sounds like a complete mess. This track sounds like there was little to no effort put into it. The worst beat so far as well. And I really don't think I have a positive thing to say about this track, as it just didn't bring that much to the table and felt empty. It's the only word to describe it. Spin Again, huge miss. We are now 4 for 8, and let's move on to track 9. Track 9, That Fire, I thought it couldn't get any worse, but it somehow did. With the opening line of this track being so tucked that I had to look up the lyrics to even understand what Uzi was saying. Not to mention the high-pitched singing on the opening of this track was just horrendous. Super shitty hook, no substance at all. Definition of just underwhelming. Yeah, I feel like this track just kind of went in one ear and then out the other. Not much more to say about this song. You've heard it all already. And with that being said, we are 4 for 9. Let's move on to track number 10. Track number 10, I Gotta, presents us with this glow beat that immediately reminded me of something that I would hear Chief Keef on. Uzi's flow on this track is just decent to say the least, and I feel like the vocals on this track are just all over the place, as the chorus is perfectly in tune, sounds great, and then you get to the hook, which is just the most out-of-tune thing I've ever heard. The opening to this track is really dragged as well, as I feel like the bass dropping 15 to 20 seconds earlier would have not made that big of a difference. I don't know, really it's just this out-of-tune hook, which I can't seem to get past, which just chalks this one up as a miss. And with that being said, we are 4 for 10. Let's move on to track 11. Track 11, Endless Fashion, starts off with Uzi rapping about various clothing brands. And not to mention, this track's actually a cover from the song Blue, which doesn't really sound that great, in my opinion. Uzi on this track just sounds okay at best, but the same cannot be said about the feature of Nicki Minaj, which is just 2-3 steps below that. Some of the worst bars I've ever heard from Nicki, some being, I got a Republican doctor, make my ass great again, MAGA. Bruh. And the rest of Nicki's feature was just kind of decent at best. I don't really have much else to say about it, to be honest. Uzi's verse, however, does pick up a little bit, speaking on how he brought his luxurious clothing around to the hood he grew up in. And these braggadocious lyrics about clothing are backed up with a great flow from Uzi as well. But I feel like the hook kind of does get old after a while, and it just kind of sounds meh. Overall, I don't see myself going back to this track. It was a nice shot at flexing clothes and really nothing else. This track ending, we are now 4 out of 11. Let's move on to track 12. Track 12, Mama I'm Sorry, goes over Uzi living the party lifestyle, with a hook talking about how he's taken a couple of shots and done a little bit of Molly and how he's feeling good. We then move on to the chorus, which is again out of tune and just sounds so discombobulated. And with it being out of tune, the rapping on this is just awful as well. It's like he says one line and then the next line just has no relevance to the first line that he just said. I don't know, it's just all over the place. But I will say the fun and peppy hook is what did keep me engaged and going back to this song. And the second verse was really not anything special either. The hook was really the bulk of this song, and like I said, what kept me engaged into it. Honestly, the fun and catchy hook was enough for me to give this song a plus, so we're now 5 out of 12, and let's move on to song 13. Track 13, All Alone, starts off with a hook that's just kind of okay, with Uzi talking about his abundance of money and how he has no plans to run out soon, and also how he even has some for his future grandson. The course of this song goes into Uzi talking about how he had to have patience in order to make it. He also gets into his misunderstandings and how he likes his girls from the hood. And then the second verse of this song just takes a complete step down, with corny cereal bars, one being "my circle tight just like Cheerios." We also have Fruity Pebble Diamonds hitting like a bowl of cereal. I don't know, man, this song just felt kind of there, and at a lot of points it felt dry. It had a lot of dry moments, and That's about all I can say about this one. This track is another miss in my opinion, bringing us to 5 for 13. Let's move on to track 14. Track 14, Nakamura, starts off with this distorted guitar melody, which would have sounded great with trap drums. Then we're met with this completely different beat, which is peppy and super upbeat. Uzi's vocals sound great over it. Uzi brings a lot of energy to the table on this one, but again, it's just the subject matter. I mean, he has braggadocious lyrics, but what haven't we already heard from the other 13 tracks? This track does bring us some of the best vocals that Uzi has to provide so far. But overall, this track wasn't really that bad. I could actually see myself going back to this one in the future. Track 14, Nakamura, was a hit, so that brings us to 6 for 14. Let's move on to track 15. Track 15, Just Wanna Rock, greets us with a slowed down version of the song, but then suddenly moves into the song's original speed. I'm gonna make this one short and sweet. I'm gonna be brutally honest. I was never a fan of this song even after the day it dropped. We hear Uzi attempting a Jersey club song on this one, which I feel like just doesn't fit his style in any way, shape, or form in my opinion. And with the song only being 2 minutes in length, I kind of feel like it just goes in one ear and out the other. I mean, the first half of this song is okay, but I mean, the second half is just, I could go without ever listening to this song again and be perfectly fine with it. Whew, I am definitely going to catch a lot of hate for this one, but Just Wanna Rock is a miss, in my opinion, bringing us to 6 for 15. Let's move on to track number 16. Track 16, Fire Alarm, is trash. It's just that simple. The song just sucks. I legitimately cannot remember the last time I physically cringed from a song being so bad, and this song got that out of me. Like, my god, this song is horrible. I mean, where do I even start on this one? Snow Strippers did a terrible job. Uzi's vocals are pitched down in this song, which sounds absolutely horrendous as well. I mean, this song just sounds like it was made in 5 minutes or less. Like, it just sounded so rushed, so incomplete, and it just was not great. The beat sucks ass, simple as that, and Snow Strippers nor Uzi sound like they were either trying at all. And with this joke of a song out of the way, we are now 7 for 16. Let's move on to track 17. Track 17, CS, is another heavy metal cut, and let me say, this instrumentation was absolutely incredible. The track starts off with an acoustic guitar, which brings it a lot of warmth, and then suddenly opens into this electric guitar melody, which sounds absolutely fire. Bass line in the back is also fire, and Uzi's angelic vocals blend extremely well with this beat, in my opinion. We also hear Uzi tap into this heavy metal, choppy type of flow, which he actually pulled off really freaking well, in my opinion. Yeah, track 17, CS, just a solid song overall. And with that, we are now 8 for 17. Let's move on to track 18. Alright, track 18, Werewolf, with Bring Me the Horizon, starts off with this kind of mellow, laid-back guitar melody as the startup, and then all of a sudden transitions into a banger heavy metal song. The song starts off with Bring Me the Horizon, which they sound absolutely incredible and full of energy and charismatic. And Uzi's feature on this track is only about 20 to 30 seconds long, with Bring Me the Horizon being the main ingredient. But I gotta give Uzi his props on this one. He sounded absolutely phenomenal. He comes in with the flow that almost reminds me of something that Red Hot Chili Peppers would make. Yeah, I mean, this was just a super high energy track. Bring Me the Horizon did their thing. They're 2 for 2 on songs with Uzi. If you haven't listened to Amen, which is another song with Bring Me the Horizon featuring Uzi, you definitely should, as it's a freaking banger like this one. This song was great, one of the best on the record in my opinion, and with that we are now back up to 50%. We're 9 for 18. Let's move on to track 19. Track 19, Pluto to Mars, were met with this super synthy instrumentation. A really just fun and upbeat track with great production. Uzi comes in with a catchy flow, a catchy melody. The delivery is also great. Lyrically, it sounds okay, but the bouncy rhythm from this beat along with Uzi's flow made this a super fun listen overall. And at the end of this one, we are 10 for 19. Let's move on to track number 20. Track 20, Patience with Don Toliver, hits us with these super dreamy chords with a great counter melody as well. I feel like Uzi and Don Toliver blend really well on this cut. Lyrically, we see Uzi fantasizing over a chick and he's contemplating whether she really has feelings for him or not. We also get these beautiful background vocals from Don Toliver complimenting Uzi's verse. Uzi also talks about how he thinks he upsets this girl because she didn't like him back and how he turns to drug use because of it. My only problem with this track is that the verse in the second half is just super repetitive and I kind of wish he switched it up a little bit. Overall, super solid track. Uzi and Don Toliver both did their things, and that brings us to 11 out of 20. Let's move on to song 21. Alright, track 21, Days Come and Go. This beat has a super nice swing to it with a super fun, upbeat, synthy beat. Uzi talks about people only wanting to be around him because of his substantial amount of money. This is a super introspective cut as Uzi gets into the highs and lows of his life before the fame. And although I really did enjoy this track, I feel like it could have been like a minute and a half shorter and he still could have gotten his entire point across. Alright, with this track being over, we are now 12 for 21. Let's move on to track 22. Track 22, Rehab, were met with this super melancholy beat, and on this track we see Uzi switching to the more introspective side of things. We hear Uzi talking about how his friend Morgan was a huge impact in his life, and how basically she was like a second mother to him. Later into the song we found out that his friend Morgan had passed away, and we hear Uzi reflecting on her passing. Towards the end of this song, Uzi starts to take some of the spotlight off Morgan and mentions another friend of his named Jake, who would, just check up on Uzi and make sure he was doing alright. Yeah, this song was absolutely amazing. I honestly would not have expected Uzi to get this introspective, but I really respect him for doing that, and he sounded great nonetheless. I would highly recommend giving this song a listen as it was my favorite so far. And with that, we are now 13 for 22. Let's move on to song 23. Track 23 hits us with this super fast-paced EDM kind of beat that sounds almost experimental in a way. We hear opening lines from Baby Metal, which honestly I can't decide if they're good or bad. I really don't know how to feel about them, to be honest with you. We then hear Uzi talking about how he's not from this earth, which we have heard before from Eternal Atake, and how he came down to earth just to drop the Pink Tape album. Uzi's part was groovy, it was super laid back, I loved it a lot, but my only real complaint with this song is about halfway through, maybe a little more, we're met with just a bunch of random, distorted sounds for about 20 to 25 seconds, which just felt super unnecessary and kind of took away from the momentum a little bit. But besides that, this track was a super fun listen. I recommend you listen to this one as well. And with that, we are 14 for 23. Let's move on to song 24. Song 24, we hear production by none other than Weezy Outta Here. We're met with this super ambient beat production-wise with great trap drums, a great bounce from Weezy Outta Here, great sound selection as well, not to mention. We then get more clothing bars from Uzi throughout this track. I feel like Uzi's voice also complements the beat really well, in my opinion. And Uzi's basically going over how ever since he got famous, he has enough money that he has nothing to be worried about, basically. Zoom was a hit. This song was great. We are now 15 for 24. Let's move on to track 25. Track 25, of course, the second I turned it on, I knew this beat sounded familiar, and that's because it was actually a leak for Eternal Take back in like 2018 or 2019, somewhere around that time. Uzi complements this beat exceptionally well with a snappy flow and great charisma. Super catchy hook as well, complementing the beat. Uzi gets into his hatred for the cops, his hatred for the law, things of that nature. But other than that, subject matter-wise, I feel like it just remain the same from the majority of the songs we've already heard from this album. But other than that, I will have to check this song off as a dub. We are now 16 for 25. Let's move on to the final track, track number 26. Track 25, Shard Eye, we're met with this pretty average sounding trap beat. Uzi on this track, subject-wise, gets into how he feels abnormal on this planet and can't seem to change himself from everybody else around him. But other than that part, we're just met with more stagnant lyricism from Uzi, more corny bars. I got bored from this track about a minute into it. More corny sex bars as well, like the beginning, terrible lyricism throughout, god-awful hooks. I mean, for fuck's sake, this man is rapping about vaping. Come on, bro. Super weak track overall. Pretty disappointing for a closer, to say the least. And with that, we are brought to our final ranking, which is 16 out of 26. Overall, as a whole, I feel like this album was just kind of all over the place. I kind of wish Uzi had stuck to one style, either heavy metal or trap, and just rolled with it. I feel like that would have made the album flow a lot smoother, in my opinion. Lyrically, I feel like Uzi really hasn't stepped up his game that much from Eternal Take, his last solo album, but that doesn't deny the fact that there are great tracks on here, such as Rehab. And yeah, those are my final thoughts on this album. In my opinion, the best song was Rehab, and the worst song by a mile was Fire Alarm. And that just about does it for this one. Hope y'all enjoy. Leave a like, drop a comment, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.